Hello and welcome to ShoreTel Live. I am your host today, Gary Simpson. I'm an application engineer in the ShoreTel Solution Center. And today we're going to be discussing Connect ONSITE. Before we get into some of the details, I want to get some house cleaning out of the way. So let me go to the next slide here. And a couple things. First, let me talk about the schedule. As I said, we're talking about ShoreTel Connect today, and Connect is our ONSITE solution. But as you see there, the schedule, we also talk during these ShoreTel live sessions about Connect ONSITE, Connect Cloud, Connect Cloud Contact Center, Connect ONSITE Contact Center. You can see the schedule there, and down at the bottom, the URL for joining these sessions. I always try to recommend that people attend other parts of the Connect solution. Not so much that you are necessarily going to take advantage of it. However, it's good to know how deep and how wide Connect is as a platform. And so I think it's important to see some of those other options that are available to you. Even if you don't take advantage of them, it's very nice to know that they're there. So down at the bottom, that URL, if you click that link or you go to that link, you can sign up for other sessions if you want to. Now, today we're going to be talking about Connect ONSITE. As I mentioned, we're going to start with a little bit about ShoreTel for folks on the phone that don't know us or are new to ShoreTel in general. And then we're going to dive into the Connect solution. And as I said, it's going to be all ONSITE related today. So we're going to talk about the switches and appliances that are part of the Connect solution, the Edge Gateway, the phones, mobility, a little bit of contact center, but not much because we do have dedicated sessions for that. So I have one slide I want to just show you on that one. We'll talk about ShoreTel Director. We'll talk about the Connect client, and then at the end we'll do a little live demo to give you a taste of what Connect looks and feels like. All right, so with that, let's get started. So first, a little bit about ShoreTel. If you're not familiar with us, we were founded in 1996 as a pure IP solution. So we've been doing voice over IP since our inception. And so things like cloud are not alien or foreign to us. And obviously, as you saw in the prior slide, Connect does come in the Connect Cloud format as well as the ONSITE format. And in 2012, we bought a company to do cloud. So we do span the entire gamut of how you can consume telecom resources, unified communications resources. We are headquartered out of Sunnyvale, California. So we are a US company. And we have offices throughout the world. We are a global company, even though we started in California. We have a ton of customers, and every time I show this, these numbers are always old, so I apologize. And they fluctuate. They usually go up by quite a bit, and I got tired of trying to update my numbers, so I just put plus signs. That way I could sort of cover where we are. One day I'll probably try to update that to the accurate number, but the point is we have a ton of people who use ShoreTel. And we have a lot of folks who we used to refer to, and we still do, as raving fans of ShoreTel. And that continues to grow both in the ONSITE world and now in the past few years in the cloud world as well. ONSITE, which we're talking about today, is available in 50 countries, so all over the world. And our cloud services is mainly a US service. However, it's branching out into the rest of the world as we speak. We just launched in Australia, for example. So this is becoming much more of a worldwide offering as well. We are also a public company. We're on a NASDAQ. And so whenever I talk to folks about ShoreTel, it's really nice to know ShoreTel is a public company because it does mean people are analyzing what we do. They're analyzing our fiscal health. They're analyzing our technology. There's a lot of public records out there about ShoreTel. We've always been a profitable company. We've always been a healthy and innovative company. And pretty much since I've known ShoreTel, they've always had money in the bank. So unlike some of our competitors that have debt problems, who shall remain unnamed, ShoreTel doesn't seem to have that problem. So it's kind of nice that it's an open book and you can get a little bit more detail about us if you need to. Now today we're talking about Connect. And we're specifically talking about the ONSITE portion of Connect. But Connect, just before we get into the details, is really one of the biggest undertakings ShoreTel has ever done, even since our inception. when we first started making equipment, Connect became a huge part of what we did, because as soon as we purchased a cloud company, we wanted to develop a platform that we could give to our customers and allow them to consume and use in the ways that are best for them. So I like to say the customer gets to call the shots. So let's talk a little bit about this Connect solution. We like to say in ShoreTel, Connect is as simple as 1, 2, 3. So what's the one? Well, the one is there's one solution. ShoreTel doesn't make multiple products. Unlike, again, some of our competitors that have small business, medium-sized business, and enterprise systems, and depending on where you are in the spectrum, you may grow from a small size to a medium size and have to throw out your equipment and get all new equipment. ShoreTel's never done that. ShoreTel's believed in having one product, and this whole concept of forklift upgrades and things like that just aren't part of our DNA. So we don't have multiple different products. We really have one product. Now, it does come in a small business edition, and we mainly do that to keep the costs low, but it's actually the exact same product as the enterprise edition. There's no differences, feature functionality-wise. There's obviously some limitations on it for small business, but most small businesses fit well underneath those limitations. And if they ever want to grow, all they have to do is change the license, and they are staying on the same exact system. So it removes this concept of having to put a bunch of stuff in, rip it all out, put new stuff in, depending on how your company grows. What's the two? Well, two consumption models. As I've said since the beginning of today's session, Connect is available to our customers in either a service mode or a product mode. So if you want to buy the product, you can buy it. If you want to consume it as a service, you can do that. And what's the three? Three different deployment options. So you've got this concept of being able to bring in your telecommunication system as a cloud service. You've got the option of bringing the telecommunications in as an on-site product, or hybrid, a connection between those two. So you've got this ability to span, which is really nice as well. The whole idea of this is to make it so that companies can grow and change and move and be flexible and agile. And so if you have a system that allows them to grow in the way that they need to grow and they don't have to throw it all away to get the new stuff, that makes them that much more comfortable and flexible with their choice in the first place. Now, if we talk about one solution, you know, we started out as a company really talking about one solution and talking about it from the management end. And where that has transitioned to over the number of years is that it's become more about the user experience. So when we talk about administration today, and I'll show you the ShoreTel Director, that has become less important over time, and the Connect client, the desktop application, has become more important over time, because what it's about is empowering all the people in an organization to be as efficient as possible, not just the person who manages the phone system. So the Connect client was built with this concept of focus on communication, and I'll show you that. You can create meetings easily. You can manage your documents for file sharing and things like that for desktop sharers and whatnot easily. Available on a Mac and a PC. The Connect client for web allows you to bring other folks in so that even people that are not part of the ShoreTel experience can dabble in it. You know, you can bring in your vendors, your customers, your suppliers. And then the connection to the contact center is a very important one too. I've had a boss who's always said to me, every company's a contact center. Some of them just don't know it. And it's true. Connect OnSite does have the ability to do a very simple contact center with our work groups function, and it can attach to a much more powerful contact center for folks that need all the enterprise class capabilities, such as email and chat and that sort of thing. The two consumption models, as I talked about earlier, are very simple. As a service, someone does all the work for you. That's Connect Cloud. For a lot of folks, that's not the best way to do it, though, and so they prefer the cardboard box method, where they get all the product and they manage it themselves. I was an installer for a long time. I was a customer of ShoreTel for a long time, and I can understand that philosophy. There is a power to being able to control all this stuff yourself and have it under your fingertips and be able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it, without relying on a service, without relying on a third party. So there is a benefit to that. The beautiful thing here is we don't force you into a box. We don't force you to decide that you're going to do one thing or another. And at the end of the day, the 3 deployment models allow you to mix and match. So even if you make a choice that you want to go cloud, or you make a choice that you want to go on-site, again, as I was saying, we don't put you in a box. You really haven't chosen just cloud, and you really haven't chosen just on-site. You've chosen a platform. This is why I was recommending going and looking at the other sessions that we do. You've chosen a platform that allows you to take advantage of any of these things. Hybrid ties this all together. So you've got this ability to do what you need to do. And so it's a really nice thing not to say, oh, I bought into the on-site platform. Darn, I guess I'll never be able to take advantage of that cool cloud stuff. No, that's not the case. And the same thing in reverse. Oh, I bought the cloud stuff, and I've opened up a big business, and I really need an on-site system because they need the security, they need the control, whatever it is. Well, again, you're not boxed in. So these 3 deployment models make a big difference to companies in how they grow and scale. Now, this is an example of the sort of the logical layout of what is Connect. And I'm just going to go through it a little bit fast here because I want to get to the bottom part here. What you can see here is logical abstraction of what a communication system can be. The middle is the soft switch. You've got the applications that sit on top of that. Below all that is the secure access layer that protects everything above. And then the green down at the bottom is your outside clients. So your phones, your software, your trunks as you're connecting them in. Those are all outsiders. Those are all things that we have to consider insecure so we can make sure that you're protected. So that's why they're below that secure access layer. And then on either side, you've got management and APIs. Management, well, the system should be easy to manage because otherwise that's just going to be a pain in the butt. And the APIs allow you to connect to other software, hardware, equipment so that it allows you to, again, expand. We know that we're not the only communication system in any customer's network. They might have other things they want to tie in or tie together, and APIs allow us to do that. Now, if you take this logical layer and you turn it into the actual physical components, here let's take a look and see in real time what this could look like. So first of all, you've got those apps, and those apps are managed by servers. So you've got a mobility server, you've got a distributed voice server, you've got a contact center server, you've got a collaboration server, that sort of thing. These servers manage those apps and serve the app to the rest of the system. Below that, you've got the soft switch. Now, a soft switch can turn into our appliances. And this has always been sort of the secret sauce for ShoreTel because a lot of companies have servers to do applications. But the appliances are really where we became famous because these are like little Lego building blocks. You can mix and match these, add them, subtract them, move them around, distribute them. And so it really meant that you could almost build any kind of communications platform you wanted to build, and you weren't, again, stuck. And so these little appliances are dedicated devices that do what they do and do it really well and run all the time, literally all the time. These things don't have any moving parts. If you count the fan, I guess they do, but generally the fan is not even necessary. I was told once by an engineer the only reason the fan's in there is because we have to put it in there for regulation reasons. But these appliances can run without that fan forever. And to manage them, all they really need is an IP address and knowledge of the main server. So replacing them, swapping them in and out, easy, simple. Below that, you've got the secure access layer, and that turns into the edge gateway. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but that basically is what gets you connected. So all your outside telephones, your computers, again, your trunks and things like that, they're going to come through either directly into the system if they're in the office, or they're going to come through the edge gateway as a protected outside insecure device into the rest of the communication system. Now, you don't just have to go where we've got what you see here, physical servers and physical appliances and things like that. You can actually do mixing and matching for virtual. And this is, when we talk about hybrid, a lot of people think the only hybrid is cloud or on-site, and then there's a hybrid of those too. There's another kind of hybrid, and that's hardware, physical hardware versus virtual hardware. And you can hybridize that too. This is one of the cool things about ShoreTel is I can actually start to take those servers and turn them into virtual machines. Those appliances can actually stay as physical devices if I want to. So I'm hybridizing the difference between the physical servers and the virtual servers. So why would I do that? Why would I want to have a physical device if I can go all virtual? Well, as we all know, as technology progresses, you always sort of keep a foot in the old world as you're moving off to the new world. And so people still have analog telephone lines. People still have PRIs and T1s. And at the same time, now they're getting virtual services like SIP for their telephone service. Well, it's really nice in ShoreTel's world to say, hey, I've got to terminate a telephone line. Well, that needs something to plug into. And so these little devices, these appliances, can be that device that you can plug that telephone line or that PRI directly into. If you're actually going all SIP, well, you could actually make those virtual as well. So you could go wholly virtual if you wanted to, where all the applications, the phone switch, the trunk switch, the edge gateway, all virtual devices. So this hybrid capability in our ONSITE system is another way that puts you as a customer in the driver's seat, because you get to pick what makes the most sense. I can tell you from a recommendation purpose, I always used to recommend my customers do buy some appliances, some physical appliances, because like I said earlier, they don't go down. They work all the time, and they give you that ability to have a foot in the old world and a foot in the new world. And a lot of the devices, as we'll talk about in a moment when we get to switches, allow you to start in one world, the old school way, and transition to the new school. So they actually can do analog or digital, but then they can be flipped and turned into SIP if you ever get rid of those circuits. So even there, you're not losing out. You haven't bought into a system that you're stuck in. These things are very flexible and malleable and allow you to make changes when you need to. All right, so let's dive in a little bit deeper and talk about some of those switches. So what you see there in the middle of the screen, the picture, are the switches themselves. They come in two varieties. They come in a half rack unit, 1U unit, and then down at the bottom you see a full rack unit, 1U as well. So you can take two of those half racks, put them together side by side, and it becomes one full rack. And we actually sell a tray that allows you to do that. What it means is you can have more density in a smaller amount of space. So in the old days, when I first started doing phone systems, they had whole rooms dedicated to the telephone. So you'd walk in and there would be all kinds of servers and hardware and equipment, and the whole room was the telephone system. That got smaller over time as you started to get servers doing some of the work. And what ShoreTel's done is made it so that we can actually take these devices and turn them into 1U racks. So within one rack, we can have a huge phone system that normally would have taken up rooms, if not multiple rooms, in the old days. Now, these new switches, we've done switches for a long time, but the new switches that we're producing have some very cool performance capabilities. We've been able to take advantage of newer, faster DSP technology. And because of that, we can have it so that the switches don't have any trade-offs. And what do I mean by the trade-offs for digital, analog, or paging? Well, in the old days, if you think of a computer chip, right, a CPU. It's a sort of a loose analogy, but follow along with me for a second. That CPU could do multiple things, but it couldn't do everything. So you sort of had to decide, is it going to do this or is it going to do that? So the more CPUs you had, the more choices you had, but you still had to decide, is it going to do this or is it going to do that? Well, the newer switches, there aren't those trade-offs. They are so efficient, so powerful that you don't have to worry about, well, let's see, I've bought a switch for 100 users, but if I cut it in half to manage my telephone lines, I'm going to only be able to support 50 users. No. Nowadays, you can say, hey, I'm buying a 100-user switch. It's going to support 100 users, and then I've still got my options for trunking and conferencing and other things. Also, higher density. So you've got 500 and 200 port switches. What does the 500 and 200 mean? That's the number of IP phones, i.e. users, that can be supported by the switch. So if you can imagine in a 1U rack unit, like you see there at the top of the stack, if I put two of those next to each other, I could have 1,000 users in one rack U of space. U stands for unit, so one rack unit of space. That's a lot of capacity in a very, very small space. Also, these switches have dual and single T1 and E1 switches on the front. You can kind of see that the third one down actually has two different input ports, two ports for plugging in switches. So in the old days, we'd have a T1 or a PRI dedicated to a switch. Now you can actually have two T1s or PRIs dedicated into a switch, which gives you, again, more capacity. But also you can still do the thing where you can buy multiples of these so that if one T1 goes down, I've still got my other switch operational. So nice to do that. Now you'll also see that it says 30/60 SIP trunks with media proxy. That's just a fancy way of saying that not only will these switches do digital circuits, but they'll also do IP connectivity for telephone, such as SIP. And this is what I was talking about. You can take a box like that does a PRI, and you can actually split it in half. And you can say, well, I'm going to plug a PRI into the first span, and in the second span, I'm going to have it do SIP. So now I've got a foot in the old world and a foot in the new world. And why would I want to do that? Well, what happens is the new world crashes. I want to have a leg to stand on. So my good old trusty PRI can still be up and running while I figure out what's wrong with my SIP provider. So this is a great way to do that. And if I ever get rid of that other PRI, great, turn them both into SIP trunks. Now I've got the switch just doing SIP. So very nice that you've got this ability to span the technologies and make sure that it does what you need it to do when you need it to do it. Now at the bottom there, it says 48 and 24 port analog switches. That's that 1U switch at the bottom of the stack that you see there. And so we do support analog because, like I said, you know, even though we get more and more technological advancement over the years, we still have analog lines. We still have some old technology that's kicking around, especially in things like schools, campuses, hospitals. You know, there's a bunch of different places where analog is important. And so you might want to be able to not only put in a voice over IP switch, but be able to support a lot of analog lines. And you can do that again in a 1U space, either at 48 analog phones or potentially 24, depending on what your needs are. These switches also offer some cool new management capabilities. So two-stage upgrades. This is one that when I was an installer, I would have loved. Unfortunately, now I'm no longer an installer, so I don't get to do these upgrades and installs anymore. But when I did, one of the problems I used to always have was that I'd have to do the upgrade on demand. So for example, Friday night, all right, we're shutting down the system and we're doing an upgrade and we're not doing anything else until it's done. And that was a little stressful, as you might imagine. So this new concept here is you can push code out to the switches and then upgrade them. So you could push all the code out on Wednesday afternoon and then wait until the cutover Friday night, knowing that all the code's out there. This is incredibly useful for global installations. I've done a couple of different global installations in my time, and we used to have to do follow the sun. So as a office left, we would take over their office, upgrade all their systems, and go to town. The problem is we'd have to push the code out, and sometimes you'd have transatlantic issues, and the code wouldn't get there, and stuff wouldn't work, and we'd have to call somebody in from the local office to restart equipment, that sort of thing. So here's a great way to be able to push that out, know that it's up, know that it's ready, and then just flick the switch, have it restart, and come online with the new code. Very, very cool feature. We also have a new PRI-D channel tool on these switches so that you can test your circuits and be able to go back to your carrier and say, nope, everything looks good on my side. You've got some slippage on your side. You've got to fix your problem. So it's nice to be able to have that independent testing capability and not just rely on your carrier to say, oh, everything's good. I don't know why you can't make your phones work. Here you can say, oh, I can tell you my phones work. I can see exactly what the problem is. They've also got a USB port on the front. You probably can't see it, but on the front of the switch, sort of in the middle, it's vertical, is a USB port. And the reason that's on there is for testing purposes. So if you have a problem, one of the problems with phone systems is the problems that they have always occur at 12 at night on a Saturday. And by the time you come in on Monday, either the system's down or it's all back up again and you don't know what happened or why it happened. Here you can capture huge amounts of logging data. So you can put that USB flash drive in, start capturing data, let it run through the weekend, and then analyze the output on a Monday or Tuesday to try to figure out where that problem occurred and what was going on. Level control over the analog ports. So you can make the analog ports louder or softer. Again, this is very valuable. In a campus situation, for example, somebody says, hey, you know, when I'm on the phone, nobody can hear me, or I can't hear them. Now you can actually boost those signals if need be. And down at the bottom there, balanced paging output adapter. That's the little adapter that you see below the switches. And the concept here is on the front of our switches for paging and things like that, there's a 3.5 millimeter jack. And so it looks kind of like what you'd have on your on the old iPhones, not on the new ones, that you could plug into. Well, on the front of our switches, you have that jack, and then that little adapter allows you to have screw terminals so that you can wire them up to a paging system. Just makes life easier, and that's kind of a nice new feature for the switches. In the blue chart over on the right-hand side, you can see the models. The way it works is the ST stands for ShoreTel, as you might imagine. The number stands for how many either IP phones or analog phones would be supported. And then an A or a D at the end determines whether the switch can support analog or digital connections. So if you take a look at the ST100DA, that would be a switch that supports 100 IP phones, has digital input for PRI, for example, and analog capabilities for some analog telephones or analog trunks. And that's the way you read that information. So there's a bunch of different variations there that you can, again, mix and match like Legos to build the communication systems that you need to build. Now let's switch gears, talk a little bit about the Edge Gateway. Now the Edge Gateway is a newer device for Connect, and it's actually a virtual device. So that's why the icon looked a little different in the earlier diagrams. We've had the ability to do VPN phone connections for a long time. And what's a VPN phone? Well, you've got somebody who wants to work from home. You send them a phone, they plug it into their home internet, and it VPNs back to the home office and connects to the telephone system. So I can have people work from anywhere. Now, ShoreTel's done this for a while, and we've gotten really good reviews for what we've done. However, there was one place that we were missing, and our customers actually asked us to include in our VPN connection, which is this. If you plug a phone in, the phone would connect to the main office and work perfectly well. But if you wanted to use any of the software, you had to set up a software VPN to connect to the phone system. Well, now you don't have to do that anymore. The Edge Gateway terminates both phones and software. So the Connect client, which I'll show you in a little bit, can go through that Edge Gateway and get its services. And the same thing with the contact center. What this means to companies is that if I want to get somebody working from home, and let's say they just need the communication system, I can ship them out a phone, they can install the software, and they're up and running. What did they have to do on their end for VPN? Nothing. The phone does its own VPN tunnel, the client software does its own VPN tunnel, and they connect in automatically so the user doesn't have to do anything, which is incredibly easy and very simple for that user to get up and running. If you're a contact center agent, it's a perfect world because it means that I can launch my tools, get on the phone, and start answering questions as a contact center agent immediately. All I need is that physical device, the phone, or potentially a soft phone, and I'm good to go. It's a very cool feature there. Now, the other thing that the new Edge Gateway does is it improves the codecs that we're using. So the codecs are how we take the audio coming into the phone, turn it into data, and ship it out over the internet to arrive at the Edge Gateway. Those codecs now have become much, much more efficient and much less bandwidth used. So in the old days, when people work from home, you had to figure out, well, how much bandwidth do you have at your house? Because maybe this is not going to work. Maybe there's not enough for you to do everything you need to do and talk on the phone at the same time. The good news is now we can actually use less bandwidth, but at the same time provide a higher quality of call. So it's a very, very cool capability that allows that person to work from home with not the greatest internet connection in the world, but just a decent one, and still be able to open up other applications if they need to get to the web or get to email or whatever the case may be. So the Edge Gateway not only secures and protects, but also improves the overall quality of the call and the audio of the call. And again, no VPN needed for any of this. You just launch it and go. Couldn't get any simpler. Now, when we talk about security for Connect, this is an important component because, as I mentioned, since Connect spans all deployment models, on-site, cloud, and hybrid, security becomes very important because in a cloud model, it's inherent. You have to have security. There's just no way around it nowadays. So what ShoreTel did was they said, well, we'll just make everything secure. We'll make it so that the phones have digitally signed firmware and encrypted traffic back and forth from the phone to the soft switch and to the rest of the equipment inside the phone system. What that allows you to do is to have people that either work from home or work in the office, and you can't have the phone lines tapped. There's no way to get in there because all the audio is scrambled. So in the old days when voice over IP first came out, it was clear, what they called presented across the wire, presented across the network in clear text. So you could actually see who somebody was calling. And if you were smart enough, you could actually capture those packets, reassemble them, and listen to what they were saying on the phone. Well, now you can do neither of those things. You can't see who's calling whom, and you can't listen to the data because both of those things are scrambled. And as I mentioned, the client software, the mobility software, even the interaction with Director, all encrypted as well. So you can have a system that's fully secure for folks in the office as well as folks outside the office. Now, let's switch gears here and start to move into the client experience. And the first thing are the phones. So ShoreTel came out with a new set of phones, the 400 series phones, which you see there in the first 4 models, the IP420, 480, 480G, and IP480G. There's actually another one that's not listed here, but the IP420 also comes in a G, and the G stands for gigabit. So if you want a high-speed small phone, we make that as well. It just doesn't happen to show up on this slide. But what we did was we made these phones for the Connect platform, and they are multi-purpose phones. They can be used in the cloud, or they can be used on-site. And so this is another form of hybrid, like we talked about virtual versus physical servers and hardware. Well, now here's another hybrid. You've got phones that can be hybridized to work on either cloud or on-site. Now, how does that affect you? Well, let me give you a scenario. Maybe you start small, you buy the small business edition, you got phones that are connected to that small business edition. As you grow, you need to turn people in the cloud, and you have to take a bunch of folks that were in the office and move them out to California. Well, that same phone they were using can now become a cloud phone. They don't have to buy a new one. They don't have to get a completely new model. Other providers do that. They make it so that you, oh, darn, well, we're stuck. I guess we got to sell everything, get rid of it, sell it back, buy new, just so we can move to this next stage of our development. Not with ShoreTel. So these phones were built for that purpose. Now, the IP420 is small. It's a 2-line phone. And then from the 480 to the 485, those are all 8-line phones. So you can see the buttons on the side of the screen. There's 8 buttons there. Each of those buttons could potentially take a phone call. And you can actually do more than 8 on a phone, but most people like to have a button per call just because we're humans, and we kind of like to say, hey, that's Tim on button 1 and Sally on button 7. So that's the way that generally works out. The difference between the 480 series and the 485, as you might imagine, is color. That's really the only difference. Feature-wise, functionality-wise, they're pretty much the exact same phone. The difference is going to be that it's going to have a color output. And one other small difference, the 485 has a USB connector on the back. And why? Well, because if you want to connect that button box, it actually pairs over USB. So in the old days, it would have been a button box that you put on your network, requires an IP address, requires configuration, all that kind of stuff, takes up resources. Well, now we've removed that. Now what happens is the button box connects to the phone, and the phone connects to the network. So now I'm not taking up IP resources on the network. And it makes for a much easier installation because I just take a USB cable between the two, and I'm good to go. Now, I can actually put 4 button boxes, physical button boxes, on that IP485 if I want to. So what I used to tell folks is if you want the 747 full of buttons, we can do that for you. If you don't want the 747 because you just don't have enough desk space with your monitor and your mouse and your keyboard and papers and whatnot, you can actually have 4 button boxes appear virtually on one physical button box. So again, we put you in the driver's seat. What makes the most sense for you, Mr. Customer? Well, we've got a small reception station, so let's do it with the one button box, and she'll have 96 buttons, but she'll have the ability to page through on the single physical button box. Or, oh no, I've got a big impressive reception station, so we'd like to have all the buttons there to make it easy for the person at that front desk. No problem. We'll put 4 physical button boxes on that desk. The IP655 is your conference phone. As you can see there, it's a large screen phone, and it is touchscreen. It's always the first question. Hey, it's a big screen. Is it touchscreen? Yes, absolutely. So this phone is great for executives. It's great for conference rooms. It's got a phenomenal speaker on the top, which you can see that little cylinder on the right-hand side of the phone. That's actually the microphone array. And there's, I forget, it's either 5 or 6 microphones inside that array. And as you're talking, the closest microphone points at you automatically. You don't have to do anything, which means that the quality of the audio is absolutely stupendous. When I was out doing demonstrations in the field with this phone, one of the things I used to do to demonstrate how good it was I would call someone and I would walk 15 to 20 feet away from the phone. And I wouldn't change the volume of my voice, and I'd be able to speak to them naturally, and people in the room were amazed that I could be that far away, hold an entire conversation, and the person on the other end never even knew that I was that far away from the phone. Really, really great speakerphone. And then finally, the 930D is our wireless phone. So if you've got the needs for wireless capabilities, we do have a phone for that. And it does have all the same feature functionality, so you can transfer in conference and that sort of thing. Now, Connect Mobility, as we know, as everybody knows, everyone's working away from their desk nowadays, and absolutely we support that. So you can get mobility for your iPhone, you can get mobility for your Android device. We do support the iWatch, not the iWatch, I guess they couldn't call it that. We support the Apple Watch. And the idea here is I have a full desk phone in my pocket, so I can make phone calls, I can take phone calls, I can transfer calls, I can do conference calls, I can even instant message the folks back in the office as part of the overall system. So while I'm out and about, I don't have to have any less capabilities than somebody else. And I'll give you a quick example of this. Folks that are out in the field a lot of time get a call, and then they have to say, oh, you'd like to talk to Tim in our office. Well, here's his phone number. I'll hang up with you and you can call him. Compare that to the way mobility works, which is you've called and I say, oh, you really need to talk to Tim. Hold on, I'll transfer you. But wait, aren't you out at the construction site? Yeah, I am, but hold on, I'll transfer you. And you know what? We'll do a conference call and then I'll drop off and you can talk to Tim. That kind of capability and control, even though you're out of the office, is just unbelievable. And it really means that if you've got folks that are travelers, road warriors, even corridor warriors, people that walk around inside the building, this is a great feature for them because it means they can still be mobile, but be functional at the same time. As I mentioned, the contact center, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I just want to give you a smattering. And if you're interested, like I said, to attend one of those other sessions, the big thing about our contact center is it's a web browser-based client now. So what that means is that if somebody has a large contact center, they don't have to go around to every desk and install the software for every desk. And it means that the agents, when they log in, always get to take advantage of the latest, greatest software because there are no things like upgrades needed anymore for the agents. So probably the biggest takeaway for folks that are looking at us for a UC platform and a contact center platform is that we've gone to this browser interface. This also plays in well for contact centers nowadays that don't have folks all sitting in the same room. So if you've got contact center agents that are out at their house as part of the contact center, opening a browser really couldn't get any easier. You open the browser, you log in, you are an agent. So really cool feature set there. And like I said, if you're more interested in contact center, do attend one of those sessions because we go into a lot more detail. All right, last few things here in the slides. We have a new and powerful management interface for ShoreTel. It's called ShoreTel Director. And what you're seeing there is a screenshot of it. It is a browser interface that supports multiple different types of browsers. So it's no longer we're tied to Internet Explorer like a lot of folks were. We're all starting to move away so that you can manage your system using Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Safari, whatever you want to use. It's also fully been redesigned to make it much more efficient. When you take a look at these interfaces, the measurement of quality is how many clicks does it take to get something done. If I have to click a lot of times to get something done, it's not a good interface. But if I can do a lot with a minimum of clicks, then it is a good interface. So ShoreTel's redesigned the interface to make it so that you can get to these things much easier. So for example, you've got the panel over there on the left-hand side. That's all the different areas of the interface that you can click on. Then the first box, the rectangle over on the right-hand side, are the actual details, and then down below are the parameters, the specific parameters. So if I go to users, as you can see in this screenshot here, and then I click on a phone in the top box, down at the bottom are all the details for that phone. What this means is I don't have to click in and out of screens. So for example, let's say I wanted to find all the different conference room phones. Well, I've got this ability, let me just show you this here, to do a search. So I can search for IP phones, and then I can search for all the conference phones, and then I can search for the ones that have the name Creek in them, because we got to change it to River, right? So this makes it much more fast and efficient because I don't have to jump around this interface to find all those phones and be able to change them all easily. Now it also has this concept of two-stage upgrades, and this occurs for the switches and the phones. So you can actually push out those upgrades out to the phones, and you can do that right through the management interface. I don't need a separate piece of software. I can do it right from within the web browser. And because this is a web browser, I can manage this from anywhere. I could go home on a Friday night and go, oh, darn, I forgot to make those changes to the conference room phones. Log into the web page, manage the system, make the changes I need to make, walk in Monday morning looking like a superstar. Now, another thing that's interesting about the way ShoreTel works is we've included an entire monitoring system in the solution. So the ShoreTel phone system, ShoreTel UC solution, monitors itself. So it watches all of its own switches, it watches all of its own phones and software, and can report on problems. So you don't have to buy, in the old days you used to have to buy a separate package. Now you don't have to, it's all part of the phone system. You can have it email you. So if somebody dials 911, for example, hey, I want that to be emailed to me so I know, because when my boss calls and says, hey, somebody from the office just called 911, I want to be able to pick up the phone and go, yeah, I know, it was Sue. I just called her, she's fine, she did it by accident. I've already called the police and they're not coming, so we don't get charged. So that kind of functionality and measurement and monitoring capability is really cool, especially that I don't have to pay any extra for it. It's part of the system. It's inherent in the system when I install it. All right, last thing, Connect Client, and I just have a screenshot here for you. This screenshot is a little old, and I need to upgrade it, but I'm going to show you the live one here in a minute, and we've changed some of the color schemes, and I think you'll like it. When I first saw it, it's sort of a different change because we're actually using color instead of the black bars, but I like it a lot. I think it really makes quite a big difference. The interface already, as you see here, is very colorful, very featureful, and very powerful. So let me jump into the real-time demonstration here. And the first thing I'm going to show you is the Connect client itself. So this is the Connect client. And for those of you who may be aware or not aware, this is running on my Mac. So I'm actually running this on my Mac laptop. And why am I pointing this out? Well, because one of the things ShoreTel is doing with Connect is we are supporting the two major platforms out there for computing, Windows and Apple. And the reason I'm psyched about this is because, again, when I was an installer, we would get done with an installation, everyone would be happy, everyone would be using the software, but then the CEO would come to me and say, hey, when I travel, I use this MacBook Air. And I would say, oh, okay, well, I got a couple things for you, but not exactly the same stuff. So what ShoreTel did was they said, no, that's not a good place to be. Let's make it so that the software that runs on the Mac looks, feels, and operates exactly like it does on Windows. So that CEO doesn't have to learn anything new, and he can travel with his MacBook Air. So he has a PC on his desk in the office, and when he goes on the road, he's got a Mac. And the beautiful thing is he doesn't have to learn anything new. The software doesn't look different. The software doesn't feel different. It doesn't have different features. You just use it the same way. You log in as yourself and keep on going. So I think this is a very cool feature. And as you can see there, there's no degradation in the capabilities. Everything that you can do on the Mac side, you can do on the PC side. Now, how does the software work? Incredibly simple. It's software that, as I mentioned in one of the slides, is built for focus. One of the things we found was that our competitors were building software that every time you did something, it opened a new window. And so that distracted you. It lost your focus. You ended up trying to figure out where was that window for the conference because I got to get back to that. And it took you longer and it was harder and you forgot about how things worked. So what ShoreTel's done is said, hey, can we include all that in the application? Can we make it so that you can do a phone call, do a conference, do an instant message, and it doesn't have to leave the software? That way I only have one piece of software I have to care about. And so my focus is easily managed because when I'm looking for that conference, I just have to go to Connect. When I'm looking for that IM, I just have to go to Connect. I want to make a phone call, just go to Connect. So how does that work? Well, if I go up here and I click on Kenny Powers, because on the Mac side, I'm pretending to be Kenny. And on the Windows side, I'm pretending to be Una. You can see that I've got functions, if I click on my name, that are preferences for me. So I've got settings here. I've got where my primary assignment of my phone is. I've got my conference bridge, all that kind of stuff. Those are all particulars to me. One thing I want to point out here is soft phone. The software is a phone. And so when I talk about focus, one of the things that used to happen is, hey, I'm a traveling salesperson for a company. And when I go on the road, I'm not going to bring my desk phone with me. That's just crazy. It's just too bulky. But I am going to bring my laptop because I got to get into the computer systems. So how can I use my computer for phone calls? It's the exact same software. So again, I don't have to learn anything new. I just have to click a button that says, make this my phone, in this case, soft phone, and the phone calls will come to my computer while I'm on the road. When I get back to the office, I click desk phone, and it manages my desk phone for me. So when Kenny goes to call Una, he goes up here and types in Una's name. Up comes Una. You can see the presence information. So I see that her phone's not on the hook right now. She's not, I'm sorry, it is on the hook. She's not talking to anyone. And on Una's side, Una can go to her people tab and see everybody in the office. So if Kenny wanted to call Una, he could say, all right, let me double click on Una. There goes the phone call. On Una's side, you can see the phone call coming in here. She hits a little green button. She's on the phone call with Kenny. I'm going to mute these phones. And everything you just saw me do was through the software, but it was driving my desk phone. So it wasn't using this software as a soft phone. It was using this software as a way of telling the phone, hey, go call this number for me. And then, hey, go on mute. And if I wanted to, I could do other things. Like, for example, hey, I got to put this phone on hold, or I've got to hang up the call. Those are all commands that are going from my computer to my desk phone because of the fact that I had that little desk phone radio button checked. So once the call went through, I muted the phone so we wouldn't get that Jimi Hendrix feedback because I have these two phones right next to each other on the desk here. And it made it so that I didn't even have to touch the phones. And this is one of the first reasons why people use this software, because especially if you use a headset like I do, like I'm talking to you today on, it means that you never have to really touch the phone. So most folks say, well, then why would I have a phone? Well, I can give you one very good answer. It's because the phone always works. So I work from home. Yes, I could be using my computer as a soft phone. However, every once in a while, my computer has to do Windows updates or security updates, or it goes to sleep, or I shut it down. And any of those occasions, I'm potentially missing phone calls. But a desk phone never does that. It's always on. It's always running. Doesn't matter what my computer's doing. It's going to take a phone call. So controlling my desk phone with the software is a very powerful capability because it gives me that soft phone-like experience, especially if I've got a headset again. But it's got all the benefits of a physical desk phone that never goes down, never crashes, never needs to be restarted, just does what it's supposed to do. So take that for what it's worth. But I tell you this, as a person who works remotely almost all the time, I love having a desk phone because it's always available for me. Now, there are other features here that you can see depending on what has to happen. So for example, if we both had a video camera, I could do a one-to-one video chat in the software. This is what I was talking about, focus. Doesn't launch a new window. I could just push that button, video chat inside the software. If I want to do a desktop share, I can actually share my screen, again, in the software. New window doesn't open. I could do a conference. I can add people into the call if I want to. I can transfer the call if I want to. I could record the call if I want to. And I can even take this call and move it to my smartphone. So all this control under my fingertips right there, very easy. Now, a lot of these things you could do from the phone, but they're harder on the phone because the screen's smaller, fewer buttons. I can't type things in. So the software makes the experience of using a phone, not only less effort, but also just that much more enjoyable. I can tell you, I hardly ever touch my phone. And what's happened to me now, as you saw, I called Una by dialing her name. I don't even know people's extensions anymore. If any of you during today's sessions call me up and said, hey, I need to talk to so-and-so at ShoreTel, what's their extension? I have no clue. Because now I've gotten to the point where I can type in a person's first name or last name, and I got them. So I don't even have to know their number anymore. And that's true of the smartphone app too. So while I'm out on the road, I still don't need to know their number. So it's a really, really nice feature. And it means that somebody gets hired new at your company and you realize that the person's name was started with a P and ended with a J. Who could that be? Well, let's do P space J. Pat Jackson. That must be the person I met. You can see that just by putting that space in, I've told the software, it's first one with a P and the last one with a J. I don't really know exactly. But I could also said, well, I met someone named Pat, or maybe someone that was Mrs. Jackson. So again, this makes it so that I only do what I do as a human being, and the software does all the hard part and figures out, oh, I know who you mean. Now, there could be multiples. So I might end up calling a couple different Pats going, were you the guy I met on Monday? But it does narrow down the list quite a bit, which is quite good. And if I don't type anything in there, I get the entire directory. So I actually can just scroll through, click on somebody, call them that way too. So this is the directory that used to be a piece of paper that was tacked on the wall. Don't need it anymore. The full directory is right here. And here's the value of having the directory embedded. If I want to transfer this call to Pat, I hit transfer, Pat, there's Pat, and I can do a transfer, a consultative transfer. I can park the call on her phone. I can intercom Pat. I can whisper to Pat if she's already on the phone. I can send this caller to Pat's voicemail. This is the kind of thing that makes people happy because it becomes so easy to manage your communications. Now, let's look at that from the opposite side of the spectrum here. So if I'm over here as Una, and I'm talking to Kenny, and all of a sudden I want to show him this web page, this super cool company I've just found called ShoreTel, I can say, hey, Kenny, let me show you this if you don't mind. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Right? So on Kenny's side, he gets a little indication that, hey, Una has a screen share she wants to share with you. It doesn't just explode in his face that here's this screen. He gets to decide whether or not he wants to see it. On Una's side, she can share parts of the screen, windows, the entire screen. And over here on Kenny's side, all he has to do is say, yeah, sure, I'll take a look. Show me what you got. And you can see it's actually appearing in the client. This is what I was talking about. If I get rid of the control of the phone panel, and then I open this up a little bit here, here's Una's screen inside the Connect client. It didn't have to leave the software. A new window didn't open that I have to go find later when someone says, hey, remember that screen you were looking at from Una? Oh, no, let me go find that. Nope, it's one place only. It makes my life easy. And I still get all the controls. Even though we're doing a screen share, I can still mute and unmute my phone, still do a video chat, share my screen if I wanted to, add people into the call, transfer people, record. So even though I'm sharing the screen, it's nicely put the controls down at the bottom of this particular interaction that I'm on. All right, a couple other things real quick. Let me get rid of that screen share. And we'll close that down here. If I wanted to instant message people, I can do that as well inside the software. So if I wanted to instant message Una, I'm going to hang up the phone call here too. I can actually go and say, hey, let me find Una's account, and I can do that through the people panel. So the people panel is the presence information for all the different folks. So I can see Una here's not on the phone. If I click on her tab, you can see this panel opens that I've been using to make the phone call. But down at the bottom is all the history. So all the different interactions I've had with Una, the phone calls, voicemail messages, all that stuff. So everything that's particular to Una. So if I want to, I can just say, hello, Una, I have a question. And over on Una's side, she gets a little screen pop here. And if she wants to take that call, she can. Let me just close this down here for a second. Not the call, the instant message here. And you can see here's Kenny's instant message on her side. So if I click on that, she can see all, again, her information in her perspective. So she's looking at it in terms of Kenny. Kenny's looking at it in terms of Una. So she can see all the different conversations that she's had there. So that's the concept. I can check my voicemails from the software. I can check my history of what I've been doing from the software. Sorry, click that too fast. I can even create events. So if I want to, I can create events that are web collaboration meetings where I share my desktop, just like I did a moment ago. And I can invite people from the outside in. So if I wanted to, I could have vendors join the meeting so we could discuss the new product, for example. And it's got all the typical things. I can do a date and a time. I can decide who's going to be part of the event as an organizer, who's going to be part as a presenter, or if I want to do a presentation, I even have participants, so people that just get to watch but don't get to control anything. I can create an agenda, so I could say, here's the intro of the session, and we'll do that for 10 minutes, and then we'll do the body for 20 minutes, and then we'll do Q and A for 10 minutes, and you can see it's creating the agenda in real time here. That agenda gets sent when I create the invite. So people know exactly what this meeting is about. It's not just, hey, join me on Tuesday. Hey, join me on Tuesday, and here's what we're going to do. And you've even got some very cool features down here at the bottom where I can set up my own participant codes, my own organizer codes. I can decide whether people are going to make a sound when they join so they can't join stealthily. Are they going to have participants muted on entry? So I can make this almost into a webinar event where people join and they're all muted so I can present to all of them. And then if I want to unmute certain folks, I could do that as part of the presentation. A lot of people look at this as almost like a GoToMeeting Lite, where I don't necessarily need GoToMeeting anymore because most of the feature set is embedded in the platform that I just purchased for my UC system. All right, we've only got a few minutes left here, and I do want to show you one last thing, and that is the ShoreTel Director. So let me get rid of all these windows and bring up ShoreTel Director, which is this guy here. So if I log into the interface, this is the management software that controls the UC system. And you notice the first thing it dropped me into was the monitoring part. So it's monitoring things like call volume, call quality, bandwidth utilization, highest CPU usage, highest feature usage, group usage, all this stuff. So it gives me information about how my system is being used. Up here at the top, I've got some green lights, or as the case may be, a yellow triangle, or worst case scenario, a red symbol. I might want to click on that as a link. That problem is, and to fix that problem. So this is the value of having this monitoring capability, is I can see it's this particular switch here, this edge gateway switch that I need to figure out what's wrong with that. So in this particular case, it's even telling me it's a different Ethernet address for that particular device. So it's saying, hey, something's weird about that. I used to know it on this other number, and now it's changed, that sort of thing. Over here, I've got all the controls. So if I want to look at users, I go into the users panel. And up at the top are all the different users, as I was mentioning before. And then anybody that I've clicked on, so for example, Aaron here comes up first. Here's all his details: telephone number, what kind of setup he's got, what kind of call stack do I have for him, what's his automatic off-hook preference? Does he like to use a headset or a speakerphone? How's his voicemail set up? How does the call routing work for him? What membership is he part of other groups, hunt groups, and things like that? What applications does he use? So all of this is at my fingertips, and it makes it really easy. And like I said, if you want to do a search, like if I want to find my account here, I could just type in Gary, and it narrows the list to just me. So it really makes it quick and easy because I can be in here managing multiple users and never have to leave the screen. Very cool feature. If I want to change, for example, telephones, and maybe I want to do button map programming, I can do that as well. I can do appliances, so I can look at the individual appliances that we were looking at earlier and change how they're programmed. So if I look at a T1 switch here, for example, and we'll click on that guy. Down here again, all the details change to that T1 switch. And if I go over here, I can see that it's set up for a T1, in this case using CAS and some technical mumbo jumbo here. But the idea is I'm able to control not just the users, but also the equipment, and even things like, let me show you this. I go in here, I can set up hunt groups or account codes or auto attendants. So having the ability to program, here's the main menu auto attendant, click on that guy. All the details come up down below here. I can do things like what happens on hours when they press 1, it's a dial by first name. If they press 2, dial by last name. So all that programming, again, embedded within the ShoreTel Director. And as you see here, as I was jumping through the screens, very easy. The thing I like the most is if I didn't know where the auto attendants were, I can just type that in here, and you can see it narrows down all the features of the system down to the ones that have something to do with auto attendant. So you can see here's the auto attendant section, it takes me right there. So as I get in my old age, I start to forget things. This makes it really easy because it does all the hard work of remembering where everything is. All I have to do is say, I'm looking for this, and it gets me right to the right spot. All right, we've hit the top of the hour, and so I've got to wrap things up. I appreciate you staying. Hopefully, you got enough information to whet your interest in ShoreTel and in Connect in particular. If you do have interests that go beyond our overview session today, please schedule a customized one-on-one demo with ShoreTel sales folks and ShoreTel solution architects, sales engineers, so that you can get more detail, kick the tires, ask any questions that you've got. But hopefully, again, you've seen the power of all that is Connect. And if you have any other questions, please let us know. So thank you again for staying with me through the entire hour. I'll let you all go. Enjoy your day. Go Connect.